Hello, boys and girls. Taking advantage of the beautiful weather. I think the sun will come in and out while we talk. I just thought we'll do it. The AskGuillem this week. We'll do it outside, and we're going to do it a little bit different. I spent time talking to physical coaches and managers about in LaLiga about their reaction to the first fixture list, what they've learned from it, what has surprised them the most. I've done a thread on Twitter, but I want to go through it today with you. Plus, I've got things to talk about as well. The latest I've heard about Upamecano and the link to Arsenal. Ansu Fati, and no more since we spoke last week about the offer of 100 million from somebody at some point. I'll give you more detail later. And also about Thomas Partey and what Atletico Madrid feel that's going on. And with, I almost forgot. And Coutinho and Liverpool. I know somebody's going to spoil these, and I'm just going to put the minute where I'm starting talking about these things, which again is fair enough. But if you are also interested from a coaching point of view, or even from a viewer of football games point of view, stay for the first part, because I want to talk to you about that thread I did on Twitter, and then we go through the other stories. So the first thing that everybody seems to agree with is that the physical stats during the first game are similar to stats that they found themselves with in the first game of the season. So obviously they struggled. They all struggle at the end, every single team at the end of the game. But they were surprised that that was the case. They thought they were going to struggle more. They thought it was going to be more difficult to keep the stamina going during the game. So that was a bit of a positive. Hasn't been many muscle injuries either. Again, another positive. If you remember Bundesliga, that trained less, had I think 14 muscle injuries in the first fixture list. So here, not so many. I've got to get given the stats, but it's less than those in the Bundesliga. Secondly, players used everything they got for the game, everything they got, and recovery takes longer. You remember the rule: if you're not fit, proof of it is that your recovery takes longer. Well, the same with football players here, some of which had cramps, which is a strange occurrence in professional football, but understandable as well. Then there was a point that some made, and then I started talking to goalkeeping coaches about this, but goalkeepers quite clearly suffer the most. You must have seen, there's few mistakes. Even Courtois made a couple of howlers trying to kick the ball. Soria of Getafe made a mistake as well. The biggest one of them was Pacheco at Alaves. It was a long ball to Wule, the striker of Espanyol, and Pacheco miscalculated the flight of the ball and the bounce, and actually ended up coming out of his box and holding the ball with his hands. He knew what he had done. Minute 19, basically just left the team in a really bad situation, and Espanyol took advantage of it. By the way, Espanyol, the big winners of the first fixture list, because the four teams ahead of Espanyol, they all lost, and Espanyol got the 3 points. Come on, Espanyol. We are 3 points away from safety now. Come on. Anyway. So yes, goalkeepers are suffering. Why? Well, because in the 2 months and something that they were in confinement, they couldn't train specifically as the goalkeepers do. You could get, their daughters or girlfriends or their boys to actually kick the ball. It's not the same. So by not being able to train specifically and not friendlies being played, unlike in England where they made an effort to play friendlies, which is where you get the timing as a team, but also the timing of a goalkeeper. Well, because of it, they are a little bit rusty and take decisions that are not usual. Now, some goalkeeper coaches says that veterans, aware of the limits and willing to risk less, they are less affected. So they risk less. They don't complicate themselves, while young goalkeepers trying to do everything that they're supposed to do. So it happens anyway at the beginning of the season. The goalkeepers, the veteran goalkeepers, tend to be in a better form than the young ones. And then, of course, when the young catch up, the veterans have to sit on the bench. There's not much time between games. Only 3 days, 4 days between games, so it's all about recovery, and not much possibility of making tactical changes Can you hear that noise? Somebody doing some work in one of the houses next to mine. I hope that doesn't disturb you much. Anyway, no many tactical changes possible, just little tweaks, little changes here and there, little corrections, but that's all, because it's all about recovery. Technically, all the players are below average, all of them, and some managers told me that at first they tried to work towards the physical form of the players when they started training, but they soon realized that what was important is actually to recover the good feeling, the good relationship with the ball, because most of them had lost it. Imagine, it's a lot of time just possibly doing cardio work, running and so on, but not a specific word to football, and not much relationship with the ball. Substitutes seem to be helping hugely, of course. You know, you can take 5 substitutes in 3 different goals, or 4 if you actually use it at half-time. And Villarreal, for instance, changed the dynamic of the game. The 5 creative players were substituted, and that helped with the win against Celta. On the other hand, Eibar, for instance, put a weakened side against Real Madrid, thinking we're going to lose this one, but the players will be fresher for the next game. May not be the only one that does that. I heard others that may actually do that, because 4 or 5 changes have to be done by game, and they may have to prioritize games above others, especially if you, as everybody is, apart from Granada and Atleti Bilbao, everybody's playing for something. And in fact, with Granada beating Getafe, they are playing for Europa League if they wanted to try it. But generally, everybody else is definitely needing to put the best possible formation in every game. But as I say, like Eibar did, perhaps you prioritize one games over others. Teams have maintained the rhythm, which is important to put in practice their football style, longer than expected. Obviously, the first half for sure, but sometimes lasting a second half. The Sevilla derby was a very good example. Sevilla was superb in the first half. Like Osasuna were very good as well against Real Sociedad. The rhythm was kept, the collective rhythm, which helps, put in practice what has been worked in training or what the teams tend to do. That was kept up quite high, surprisingly. There were less conflict between players, less protests to the referees. The decisions were better accepted, and players that need fans to put pressure to referees need or want to put pressure to referees a bit more shy. That's something that everybody admits. The local advantage has diminished a little bit, even though results don't tell that story in this first fixture list, because there is less pressure on the referee, who all of a sudden takes decisions that are fairer and less influenced by the pressure of the players or the pressure of the fans. So that's an interesting development. Barcelona were telling me that basically in terms of the referees, what's happening, and no fans, is benefiting them. First of all, because at the Camp Nou, fans don't make a lot of noise. They actually don't add that much, unless it's Real Madrid, and then they make a lot of noise. So while all the stadiums, for instance, the Wanda Metropolitano, Atletico Madrid, put a lot of pressure to referees, the Camp Nou, it doesn't really matter. So they haven't lost a lot there. But away, the referee gets pressured a lot by the local fans. When Barcelona arrives, Barcelona get pressured from the moment they leave the hotel. They get insulted, they get thrown at them all kinds of words, and referees feel that, of course. And that won't happen, so they think they may take advantage of it in away games. They beat Mallorca. They didn't need the referee. The last conclusion is that both teams, big teams, won, but they both left things to desire. 4 or 5 chances were created by Mallorca against Barcelona, and Eibar had their chances in the second half against Real Madrid, but they won both games. Right, that's on what's happened so far in La Liga in this first fixture list. I hope that this is useful to you. I found that interesting, and I found that that coaches and managers, assistants, physical coaches, goalkeeper coaches, they shared very openly, to me anyway, what they thought of the first game, and that I think is useful to show it to you and share it with you. Now, I haven't even asked questions really this week, because I've got 4 things to tell you which I think you may be interested about transfer stories. The first one is Upamecano. It's been linked with Arsenal. Let me tell you that Arsenal, I don't think they've got a lot of money to put out there. I don't think they're going to be able to spend 40, 50 million in players. I don't believe that's the case. We will see, but because of the expenditure from, last year, this year, and of course the COVID-19 situation, means that they haven't got a lot of money. So the first two stories are about Arsenal. Upamecano, I believe RB Leipzig are working hard to convince him to stay, to renew his contract. And they told me, the club, that they are close to renew the contract. He's a top centre-back. Perhaps he feels it's not the time to move. He'll have time to do so. But as I say, the club is optimistic that they can stay on. And Thomas Partey is the other one. He's been linked to Arsenal. Even his dad has said, his buyout clause is 50 million euros. So if anybody wants him, he's available. All right, that is true. And Atletico Madrid are pushing him out of the door as well, because the thing coming out of the club is that, we cannot do anything if somebody comes with 50 million, almost like wishing that those 50 million arrived. They're saying, Atletico Madrid, that they believe that Thomas won't stay there next season. But isn't that another way of saying, he's for sale? And they believe that it will be in the Premier League, and they've got indications that Arsenal will be the one. Yet again, 50 million euros for Thomas Partey. It's very difficult getting the information I'm getting of the kind of money that's available at Arsenal, and it's not a lot. I'll be surprised. I'll be very, very surprised if that happens. So what I can tell you from it is that, of course, is somebody that Arsenal likes. I'm not sure they have the money to pay the 50 million. And meanwhile, himself, the player, and Atletico Madrid are open to move on. Remember that Thomas Partey was approached by Pochettino to come to Spurs. It didn't happen because the money wasn't made available for Pochettino, and that means that it's been a while now that Thomas Partey has been thinking of leaving. So, interesting one, and one to keep an eye on. I was telling about Ansu Fati, an offer of 100 million euros that came out in the Sport newspaper, and we were told about it, and we were told that it was Manchester United via Jorge Mendes. Now, the thing that you need to know is that offer happened in January, and it wasn't really an offer. It wasn't somebody saying, this is what we, he is 100 million. It was more like Mendes saying, is he available? Because I believe Manchester United will be able to pay this much for him. So the offer was not made officially, but there was conversations. Barcelona said no chance, and they believe there is no chance that he will leave. That they've told him in very, in clear terms that it's very, very important to the team and is the future of the side. And I believe that obviously his father is hearing everybody, and I believe that Jorge Mendes is trying to get closer to the family to let them know that he can help if they eventually want to move on. But at the moment, there is no Ansu Fati case. Okay, and finally, Coutinho. We know that the new Newcastle, when everything gets confirmed, and everybody expects it to be confirmed, to be honest, from what I'm reading, from what I'm hearing, from what I've been asking, the consensus seems to be that the Premier League will accept the bid. And if that's the case, then obviously Newcastle will enter a new era. And Coutinho is waiting for that to happen, and his representatives. They believe that Newcastle will make an effort to have him because he's the kind of player that they can have. I said it before. I said it, why doesn't Newcastle should go for players that are finishing their contract like Cavani? And then they came out in the story saying that I said that Cavani is going to Newcastle. I'm glad that you are hearing the story properly and not twisting it in any way. So they're waiting for that because the biggest effort that his representatives are doing is towards the Premier League, and the idea is for him to go to the Premier League. Now, there's been talks about Arsenal. Nothing has arrived from Arsenal, and there's been talks about Liverpool going back on loan. No truth whatsoever. So we don't need to talk some more about it, do we? Basically, Liverpool not interested. No offer has existed. And I understand that the work that representatives have to do is to make it look like there is an auction for him. There isn't such a thing at the moment. The favourites, if you have to choose from the Premier League, are Newcastle, if the bid comes in, and if they eventually make an offer for him of some kind that Barcelona is happy with. They want to get rid of Coutinho, that's for certain. But at this point, everything is possible, including him staying. But that seems unlikely. Anyway, that's it for now, and there will be more Ask Guillem next week. Thanks for watching.